Hey, 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 as we know, life is full of surprises, both good and bad, and the day-to-day journey is full of unforeseen obstacles, and sometimes it's hard for us to see our way through. Beyond the normal mundane or where unscripted dreams live, join us for thought-provoking discussions and interviews to help us navigate through the fog and create our own path. We are the Unscripted Dream Podcast, operating outside the margins to motivate and inspire our audience. So, when you guys hear this and listen to this, make sure if you're on YouTube right now, you click the like and subscribe button. If you're listening via whatever streaming app, whether that's Spotify, Apple, you name it, yeah, man, just follow it and tap in. So today's episode is in continuance of wealth strategies. So this would be part two of wealth strategies with our host or our guest, I mean. Our guest, which should be Calvin Washington the third. Okay, he's not taking over the show, so I have to make that clear.
You're
Nah,
taking over this episode though, for sure. For sure.
right,
Yeah,
part
yeah.
two, part two. Yeah, but that's it. No taking over of the show. No behind the plans, schemes, or anything like that. I promise. So yeah, no, I'm glad to be with you guys for a second week, and to be able to kind of build up on the awareness of life insurance awareness month. So I thank you both for letting me be able to join the show again. So thank you.
Oh, pleasure, man. Our pleasure, man. Like we said, like we needed a financial advisor on this joint, and we finally got one. So appreciate you.
No problem, man. I'm excited. So excited to be here again. So and excited to kind of like dive into more of the conversations that we had last week, and excited that the base that we set last week for the listeners that listened in. And so really excited again, like I said, to be here again, kind of build on that foundation.
Okay. Well, we can dive straight into it, man.
Okay.
Not waste these people's time, man. So I'm just gonna get straight to it, man. What is a 529 plan, or what is it actually used for? And the only reason why I'm jumping right out the gate, going
Uh-huh.
straight for the jugular, is because, believe it or not, my pops actually brought this up to me today.
Wow.
So,
Oh, wow. Really? Oh, wow.
yeah,
Good,
he
good,
was
good,
like, "You need to start thinking
good,
about that." So,
good, good dialogue, man. So like, I mean, so I don't know if the audience knows it, but as I was preparing for this show, like some of the questions that you guys were asking were really good questions. And when I saw this one, I was like, wow, I come up against this every single day in the field with young families and young people that are trying, plan for education for their loved one, their son, their daughter. And so, a 529 plan works like an IRA Roth where you're putting away tax deferred money for a specific purpose. So in this case, we're talking about education. These are usually state funded plans that are into some type of like mutual fund or some sort. Um, Now, these things are able to be used for education, and even they just changed some of the laws. So you got to do your Googles, but you can use some of this stuff for private school when they get a little bit older as well. For it, if it's specifically for education, it has to be used for education purposes. Now, again, this money is tax deferred, and so if your son or daughter goes to school, you're able to use this money for a certain amount for education purposes to pay for college. Now, the downfall that not a lot of people talk about is that one, this has to be used for educational purposes. So let's say, your
I was just
son.
about to say something about that. What if they don't want to go to college?
Okay, so that's the thing. So okay, so if you want to, this money, again, the agreement is initially this money was bid, the sweetener of the deal was that you had to put this money with tax deferred. This is used for educational purposes. Now the downfall is if you don't go to school or is not used for educational purposes, there's a tax on it because you're not using it for the said agreement that we had that we had in the beginning of, hey, like, this is going to be used for educational purposes. So there are different strategies that exist to be able to achieve and skin the same cat that you're trying to achieve as far as educational planning. But there's different objectives that you can achieve through just using the simple components of life insurance. And some of the things that we're going to talk about today. So like 529 plan, again, this is not me saying 529 plans are bad. Now, if we all had crystal balls to figure out if our kids are going to go to school, then 529 plans would be 100%, good, guaranteed, But the other thing that you got to kind of think about is that, hey, like, what if my kid doesn't go to school? And that's the thing that you kind of come up against in the long run. Like I said earlier, there's some things that you can take advantage of to kind of be able to achieve the same objective and maybe get a little bit more bang for your buck and different strategies and solutions that they're out there for you. So, yeah, does that kind of answer your question about 529 plans?
Absolutely, man.
Okay,
And it
good, good.
already has me thinking about what you're speaking on in
Gotcha.
regards
Yeah,
to
no, good.
risk
That's the
planning.
whole point of this conversation, man. It's just like, it's not really like, it's not to be with the transactional approach. This is really for people that are really looking to think outside the box, not
Right.
looking to get a quote, really trying to understand like how like you can use some of these things that are simple tools and strategies And just really kind of sitting down with people that are, that specialize in this stuff. Now, the thing that you got to be careful with is that these days, a lot of people say that, they are advisors and that they are investment representatives. First thing you got to make sure you're doing business with the right people. You got to make sure that you're sitting down with the people that have the proper designations and have these licenses that they say they do to be able to have these conversations. But you got to be able to, one, find that person and be able to think outside the box when it comes to some of these things that we've been taught in our earlier lives. I know I kind of went off on a tangent, but that's yeah, I think that's really important as far as understanding, like how I kind of made that statement of, hey, like, you can still create your own 529 plan. And let's say your son or daughter doesn't go to school, you're not taxed on that because, of them making a decision to maybe start their own business or maybe, kind of jump into a trade school or maybe say, hey, you know what? Maybe college isn't the thing for me, but that you making that decision to make that investment, you're not taxed on that. You're not taxed on that decision, And so I think there's a little bit more financial peace when you think about it in that perspective. And again, you're thinking outside the box. So does that kind of like cue up any questions for you guys? I know I see you both over there thinking and looking at the top of the screen and there's no flies up there. So
Yeah. So I know you mentioned Calvin and some of the kind of the guidelines have changed
uh-huh.
recently, because I do see a shift between, I do have an estimate in time that I try not to talk about too much, but when I think about just college, I was actually listening to something yesterday, the cost of college is going up. Like
Constant.
it's going up. It doesn't play by the rising cost of college does not play by the rules.
No,
So
not at all.
so as we transition more into, like, I don't have kids. If I had
Mhm.
a kid, they're probably definitely not going to college. But just because it's too expensive and I don't like the product. But for most people, for most specialties, I
Yeah.
don't like the product. But as we transition more into more of the online, like even some of these big companies, like you see a Google or Microsoft or something, they have their own training programs, their own training curriculum and certification. So there's really no need you can really just go straight directly into what you want now.
Yeah.
So do you know anything as far as we transition more to this world where you don't have to physically show up on a university, on a campus like the three of us did,
Uh-huh.
like, how do you think that landscape is going to change for people who have a 529 like plan and they, instead of going to college, they just invest in like taking these certifications that are offered online?
Well, still, I mean, there's no downfall as far as you still having that 529 plan because ultimately, if it's used for educational purposes, you're not taxed on that. So, you can use a certain amount of money for, again, I'm not as well versed with the 529 plan. I just know what the implications are as far as if you're not using it for educational purposes. And I
Yeah.
understand like how it's designed to work. Now, the thing that you got to kind of understand is that, again, it's the fact that if you don't use it for educational purposes, that's the part where you kind of get taxed. And that's the part people really don't like. And so, like, a lot of times, like, I know that we're shifting our dynamic of where a lot of people aren't, well, a lot of people are kind of shifting and seeing, like, jumping into like entrepreneurship, maybe not going to college. Don't get me wrong. I think that, I don't want to kind of like project like what my daughter does, but I just want to be able to say, hey, like, if she wants to be able to go to college, like, yeah, here's some things that we kind of set up in the beginning when you were younger, that we just kind of took advantage of off of just kind of sitting down and understanding, like the principles of like how money works and how insurance works and how that all comes together. Again, I guess you got to kind of like use stories within this industry. So like for myself, for
Yeah.
like one thing that I did for my daughter, was that I said, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to take a big, big gamble and put it all on your health because you're so young. And I'm going to figure out and like set up a plan where we can stuff money into this plan so that, that is accruing some type of equity within the plan, is growing in value to the point where, hey, you know what? Even when the point where you go to school, I'm going to say, hey, take all the loans that you want to take, take all the loans. I'm not going to do any Parent Plus loans. So I told mom and dad I did
Oh,
those.
that was nasty.
Those are really nasty. But I'm going to say, hey, take all the loans that you want to take all the loans that you can take and maybe get all the scholarships that you can get. But when it comes time to pay those loans back, I'm going to come to this solution that we have. I'm going to pay ourselves back with the equity within this policy. And that's how you're going to pay our student loans back. And we're going to be able to build some credit over time. And in hindsight as well, we're still killing two birds with one stone. We have life insurance. So if something happens to her on the life insurance point side, hey, this is going to pay out and do what it's supposed to do. Again, kind of creating some type of generational wealth. Like these kids don't know how good this thing is because they're so young. And, it's kind of hard for them to understand how important this is. But let's say my daughter doesn't go to school. I mean, this plan still can be able to use to pay for her wedding, pay for our car, maybe she wants to start a business. I mean, a lot of people don't even know that Disney kind of like started their own business off of like the solution that we're going to talk about a little bit later on in this conversation. But again, like that's kind of some of the stuff that I did for myself and my family. And me and my wife kind of just understood the importance of like education in the long run, as far as like being able to have it just in case something happens where she wants to go to school and she's interested in it. I'm not so much one of those fathers that says, hey, like you need to do this, you need to be doing this. It's like, hey, if you want to be doing this, I know how expensive college is. It's not one of those things, like, you just want to kind of half-ass kind of go into it. So like, I want to make sure if you want to do it, it's there for you to be able to do it. That kind of like make a little bit about a sense about like,
Yeah.
okay, good. All right. I just want to make sure I could go on for like minutes and days, and I really want to make sure this is an effective conversation and we're having good dialogue. So,
Bro,
yeah.
people are picking up what you're putting down, man.
Gotcha.
You haven't thrown no salt in whatever dessert.
I do. I do. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to muddy the waters. Like, I'm not into that, man. I'm not into mudslinging.
Nah,
There are clients of mine that have 529 plans that we've set up before, and
hey,
they
man.
believe in it. I mean, again, like those are state-driven plans. They're supposed to be, money is put away tax deferred. All I'm here to say is I'm here to challenge the institution and tell people that there are other strategies that exist that just aren't talked about in our communities. And a lot of times when people sit down with me and talk about that, it's like, hey, I challenge that thinking because it's like, well, hey, where did you hear that from? Because again, a lot of times we only emulate things that we hear in our lives that trigger us to do things, so.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think we can move on to the next key talking point.
Got you.
And I appreciate you for sharing. Before we move forward, I just want to say I appreciate you, mentioning something that's very relatable. This is actually information or knowledge to me, and I'm on a recording. So, and I think about, is it really worth my time to put money in a 529 for a kid that I don't even know what their future is going to be like?
Right.
Do I want all that money and invest all my money and I can't really even tap into it later on? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the kind of stuff where,
Yes.
that's scary to me because it's like you spent all your hard earned money into, building up someone else's future just for them to say, you know what? I ain't even got it in me to do what you did, Dad. So,
Which is okay though, Joe. Like, I mean, cause like college isn't for everybody. So like, I'm not sitting here saying that people shouldn't go to school, but like, it's
hey,
just that.
I mean, that's just you're not corrupting me by any means.
Okay, cool.
I already had no, bro. I had a pre-notion on this already. Like, is it really worth my time? And that was the fact right there that I needed to be like, okay, I knew something was up with this.
Okay, good. Okay, good. 'Cause I don't want to feel like I'm being biased or anything like that. So okay, good.
Nah, not at all, man. That's just risk planning. That's what I call it.
Okay, good.
So yeah, key talking point too, man. So when we think of like creating generational wealth, man, and keeping all that money in your family, ideally is what we're referring to with generational wealth. Say if I'm 18 years old, man, and I want to start the path to creating generational wealth, how could I start doing that?
Okay, cool. All right, so we're gonna kind of get like into like what we build upon what we talked about last week. So like all of like what I've been like alluding to and talking about, and the strategies I've been talking about have been based around a component of this solution called whole life insurance, and it's a pseudo like investment. And like again, like I told you guys last week, you pay your life insurance premiums after tax dollars, and you're able to create some type of equity within a policy that kind of grows tax deferred and works just like a Roth, right? But the cool part is you're able to access this money tax free. It grows tax free. At some point in time, you're going to be able to access this money, tax free, which is really cool. And so when you apply that concept with different objectives that people have, when you really think outside the box, that generational wealth is able to be afforded through just that concept. But you're able to achieve many objectives with that simple concept. So again, educational planning. If you maybe want to save to maybe be able to pass on generational wealth, you're able to do that as well with this concept. To maybe be able to plan for a business of some sort, just through like using your simple insurance principles on a young son or daughter, you're able to pass through wealth. But again, I'm really big on the educational planning because for the clients that do it, it's really, really, really intriguing to see them sit there and actually plan and think like, okay, cool. You know what? Let's pay into this policy or the solution for maybe 25 years, maybe 20 years. This treats like a mortgage. But eventually, like, hey, look, we can come to this plan and either say, hey, we didn't get too many scholarships. Hey, let's maybe take some loans, and maybe take some withdrawals against this policy, pay tuition, or maybe let's just say, hey, look, just take all the loans, and eventually at age 25, when you graduate school, pay yourself back. You got generational wealth at this point. You got to pay the policy, I mean, again, whole life insurance is basically where you're able to say, again, it varies from different insurance companies, but you're able to come to the equity within the policy and access it while you're still living. And again, I'm gonna repeat that again. So you're able to come to the policy while you're still living to access money tax free. And again, it's mind boggling for somebody to come and say that. Now the part that people don't understand is the reason, like we're able to do that is because again, like, you're paying your life insurance premiums for after tax dollars, policy is growing and you're saving money within this plan and buying more life insurance. A lot of times for the companies that are doing it, that are, as I like to say, that aren't schmuckatellis, that are actually pretty good, that they're pumping dividends into your policy and you're getting compound interest on top of that. And it creates this juggernaut of a pseudo-like investment. And this is, again, simple life insurance. This is what the wealthy are doing to be able to pass along generational wealth to their heirs, their beneficiaries. My grandmother, like, she's really big on this. So like my grandmother, she understands that, like her grandchildren, so my brother and my cousins, they got to like kind of like get her in her good years as a grandmother. But like her great grandchildren having it and maybe will not be able to see that at some point because she's going to eventually pass away, unfortunately. But, their great grandchildren, they're still going to be able to grow up and have some form of generational wealth from what she started. So again, when I first started in this
Yeah.
industry, my grandmother had me set up whole life policies for each of her great grandchildren. So that's something that grandparents really like because again, this is something as a form of leaving something behind and their imprint on their lives that can maybe be monumental, man. Again, this thing grows in value, keeps up with inflation. That's a big thing these days. So I mean, again, again, this is whole life insurance that we're talking about. It's not in the market. It's maybe one of those like fixed like products. Again, we do have some things where you're able to be in the market, and that's a different conversation. But again, this is strictly talking about whole life insurance and how some of these people are able to use this for different strategies. And again, educational planning, retirement planning, creating your own pension. That's what we were talking about last week. You're able to do many. You can even pay off your mortgage with this if you wanted to. I mean, there's so many things that you can do with this one simple concept, but it's just not talked about because we're trained to think that life insurance is just for life insurance and that's it. So I know I threw a lot out again at you guys, but I hope I'm throwing
Yeah.
some good gems and you guys are getting some good sound bites.
No, I think it's good in the sense that we said a couple of things, Calvin, that I think are pretty important, and I hope people that are listening to this are able to catch on. Is just the importance of like to build. Like you look at some of these. I hate to refer to a TV show or things like that, but you look at something like a Succession or something like that, or something like one of these shows where people are passing things down and understanding
Yeah,
that when you talk about like generational wealth, that means that somebody's going to die. Like somebody's going to die,
yeah,
and that wealth is going to get passed on to somebody else. So it's not like it's bigger than. I hate to use a word to describe a term, but it's bigger than just one lifespan. It's bigger than one generation. It's really
yeah,
somebody making that sacrifice up front, understanding that you're going to put something in place that's going to outlive you, but it's going to benefit the people that come after you.
yeah,
And understanding that, I think that's a lot of the issue. Like I was watching something, I don't know if it was CNBC or where it was, but it was like a family. It's like a regular family that like
Alright.
owns like a bunch of banks, like a bunch of regional banks
Mhm.
that people know about. And you would never know like this. Like I watched the interview and they said that, yeah, the family declined the interview. Like they didn't even want to comment on the story, but that's quiet. Like that's quiet money. And there's a lot of wealth that's quiet. Like we see people that are flashy, but I think I can almost guarantee that most people that are wealthy, you've never heard of,
No,
you
you're
know,
absolutely right.
and, and I think if I ever disappear, that's what happened to me. If you don't see me anymore, it's because I'm good,
I heard
but
let me tell you something. Hold on. Market never disappears. But no, I think Marcus, you hit it right on the head though. Seriously, like it's a lot of times these are like regular people that look like you and I that are sitting down having these conversations and understanding and changing their mindset on these simple principles that are out there. Again, I used to say, I used to welcome everybody as a client. I used to love everybody as a client, but the worst type of client to me now is a client that's shopping around, just trying to price hunt and, really trying to, not trying to sit down and plan, because if you really try to sit down and plan, there's so much that you can do with the life insurance while you're still living. If you just sit down and have these conversations, and trying to like change your mind and shift your mind on what you think life insurance is, what you think is for. I think again, it comes down to sit down with the subject matter experts people that are trained and proficient in these fields to, again, your financial experts, do your Googles, of course. Sometimes Google can muddy the waters, but I think, sitting down with your local agents, sitting down with your advisors, that's important because they're the subject matter experts. And they're the ones that's going to kind of get those solutions and kind of like build upon this conversation that we're having right here. So, yeah. But,
So, Calvin,
go ahead. I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
No,
You
you go ahead. You guys are the hosts.
I was going to ask you.
Go
I
ahead.
just want to make sure that if there was anything near and dear that you really wanted to convey to the audience, that please feel free to use this.
Oh man, Rocket, thank you so much, man. I was thinking about this on the way, like, back. I was thinking like, okay, like what's one thing that, you would maybe say something to somebody out there that's maybe listening to this, maybe it's not in your field. I'll never forget when my uncle Alvin, when I first got into this industry, I started out as a property and casualty insurance agent, and I didn't even see like life and health and or life insurance or even investments. But I'll never forget this conversation. He told me, hey, look, man, there's a lot of money in this industry. If you carry yourself with integrity and a man of faith, and acting right and acting in full faith with all clients with fiduciary responsibility, you'll go far. And man, for anybody that's out there, man, just whatever you're doing out there, man, believe in yourself, man. Stand up and believe in whatever you're doing. Because I do believe that hard work eventually pays off and it succeeds talent. Because there's a lot of agents that's out there that's better than me, but I just had I put in a lot of work, man. I think Dame Lillard said it on like Punching Clocks, man, like on J. Cole's song. That's probably one of my favorite songs because again, a lot of times we ask for a chance to be able to sit at the table, but excuse me, like when we get the opportunity, we don't take full advantage of it. So man, anybody that's out there, man, just believe in yourself, man. And again, hard work pays off, man. And success comes over time. It doesn't come overnight. And yeah. So that was one thing I would maybe want to leave with somebody that's out there listening to this and that's an entrepreneur and just getting started.
You know what that tells me, man?
What?
That tells me that in all assets, especially when you're dealing with finances, you can't be afraid of the grind.
No, not at all. You gotta welcome it. Like they say, grab the bull by the horns, or eat the toad. Yeah, you got to be able to do that. So I think that's probably the hardest part, man. But again, I say, motivating yourself to stay in the game when it's exhausting, just to stick with it, man. Just don't give up. I'm a firm believer in not giving up. All things that you're supposed to be doing in life, you're there for a reason. So learn from it. So yeah, man, Phil, this is great, man. I really appreciate the video to come out here again, man, and talk with you guys and rap with you guys. I hope to maybe be able to do this again with you guys in the near future, maybe later on this year, man, because again, this is really effective for me. And just, I really enjoy being prepared. Audience doesn't see behind the scenes, what we did, but it was a lot of preparation. Shout out to you guys for even approaching me, because I really appreciate the opportunity, guys. So thank you, man. God bless you both.
It's again our pleasure, man. Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate you.
I guess I got one more question.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead. You guys give me questions you want.
So I know there's somebody listening to this right now, and they're on the they're overwhelmed or intimidated by the things that you've talked about probably over this episode and the episode prior to. If you haven't listened to that episode, definitely check out Wolf Strategies Part 1. But if Calvin, I just want to ask, if someone is this is the first time they've actually stuck around to listen to a conversation on Insurance 529, all of these things, and this person is feeling like they want to do something, but they're kind of frozen. Yeah. What would you say to that person because there's people I know that they'll listen to this and they're going to go talk to somebody. They're going to be like, hey, listen to this. I listened to this guy talk about 529 and all this stuff. And then there's going to be people who say, because they're intimidated, they say, I don't know anything about that. And they're kind of going to brush this person off. I know this person's listening to this episode, so I'm really talking to that person specifically who wants to take another direction. Like you said, Calvin, challenge your thinking, right?
Yeah.
And now this person is actually challenging that, but they're bringing it to people that aren't receptive of them actually challenging these things that they've kind of learned historically. What do you say to that person?
Yeah. So I said to that person, I said to that person when they reach that point, delay isn't denial. So I think that, a lot of times we come across, when we say or hear things, that we adopt things that we hear from podcasts or different, influencers or people around the world, and we come back to our circle or our family and we try to introduce those new principles, they're like, oh, they push you away. And that this is as a sign that you got to kind of like flip your thinking and switch your thinking and say, hey, you know what? I'm headed to something because you know what? Like if we all did the same thing or had the same mind thinking, we'll do the same thing over and over again for generations and generations. So, the pushback is a good thing because you're challenging your families or your circle's way of thinking, how they've been trained and wired to think for years. Another thing I would say is like, hey, it really takes this sitting down with somebody. It doesn't have to be me. I mean, again, I would love to be able to sit down with everybody, but again, there's so much business out here. Again, it's sitting down with your local agent or, again, reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, I'm green on this. I mean, I heard this on a podcast. I know that you're in this industry. Hey, could you tell me a little bit more about this? I need to know a little bit more. I need a little bit more, knowledge on this. I would like to be able to create some form of direction, but I don't know what it takes. You got to kind of like, take a leap of faith and put yourself out there and say, hey, and teach it and say things that you don't know. I learned this thing from the Army, man. I'm sorry to like bring that up, but like one thing I learned that I try to like install in my clients, if you don't know, just say you don't know it, man, for me. Cause I feel like it's so much more easier for me to teach you versus like, like you faking the funk and thinking that, hey, like, everything's hunky dory. I know, I'm assuming that you know what you're talking about where, later on in life, when we come back to do annual reviews, you don't know what it is that, what it is that you have or what it is that I gave you. So I think a lot of times if you don't know something, just say you don't know it. There's no judgment. You kind of gotta like have your blinders on and ignore the outside and ignore the haters, as they would say. Cause I think like, the knowledge is out there, man. You just gotta be able to take the leap of faith and be able to like, be comfortable being uncomfortable for somebody to be able to teach you something new. Cause it is hard in the beginning to learn something, new and new principles and kind of coming off the teachings that you've been taught. So I think it's really just kind of you kind of like understanding and embrace yourself for the battle that, hey, like you're going to come up against people that are against this and maybe not have a lot of knowledge. You kind of like got to forgive them and give them grace because you got to think how long we've been taught to think the way that they wanted us to think. And you kind of got to give them grace and kind of show them with your actions later on in life, things that you're able to enjoy because you sat down with somebody and had the conversations, and kind of like projected what you wanted in your life as far as things that are important to you, Did that kind of answer your question, Marcus?
Yeah, well, you weren't answering it for me. You were answering it for
Okay. Okay.
someone
Okay.
else
Cool.
that's listening to.
Look,
But no, you answered the question. I'm being difficult. I'm just
okay. Good. I was just, for that person that's out there, hey, look, I hope
yeah,
I did some intriguing in your mind that made you want to think about some things. So that's good. Like this whole conversation was just really to kind of like get the beak wet and to get people thinking, and asking those people that do those things in their lives that maybe been pushing off and say, hey, no, not right now. Maybe give them a chance now because, hey, like, this is, again, I see this every day, man. People are doing these things and taking advantage of these strategies. And again, it's just sitting down and having these simple conversations and educating people what's out there as far as their left and right limits financially. So,
well, Kevin, so I'll let you know. We appreciate you. I know speaking for Joe too, but I'll let Joe say his
man.
piece. But no, man, definitely appreciate you taking the time to come through and join us on this episode. I know you provided a lot of great information over these past 2 episodes. But
Yes.
it's gonna be a treat to just really get this information out there to everyone. And thanks again. But
Oh, man, I
that's all I
appreciate
have.
it, Marcus, man. Thank you so much, man. And Joe,
Yeah,
like I said, man, I again, to the fans, like, like Joe Champ, as he's known in Kappa, like Joe Champ, just really kind of set this thing up. And man, I really appreciate you kind of like opening up the dialogue for us to even have a conversation about me coming on here, man. So thanks again, man.
Hey man, don't sweat off my back. Let's look forward to having you back on to talk about future things.
Absolutely,
I don't
man.
see why
sure.
you can't. So
Absolutely,
uh,
man. So,
all right. Well, with that being said, everyone, I hope y'all enjoyed this session. Very meaningful. You got some actionable things, some things to take in consideration as far as making your money stretch or making your money work for you. So that's Wealth Strategies Part 2. Take care. Be safe.
Gapstone.